that's enough of that for the thumbnail. Okay. Hi, I'm Cassie, and this isn't a reading vlog. Hang on. What am I even recording right now? I just keep losing my train of thought. Like, I think something and then it's just whoop, right out of my head. I love that for me. I don't really love that for me. If you can hear my heater, just pretend that you can't, because a girl is cold and I'm not turning that thing off. I kind of blend in with the books with these rainbows. Like, I know this shirt might be like a little bit much, but I figured if I was gonna do a sci-fi video, I might as well bust out the weird psychedelic shirt. When I'm wearing this shirt, I feel like I'm inside a bubble, like a pretty little prismatic bubble. We should probably get going with the video, so that's enough of that. Hi, I'm Cassie, and this is another video where I remembered to say my name. Okay, so I'm currently in the middle of filming a sci-fi horror reading vlog, and it has like 4 books on it, and I'm about halfway through with filming that. But I thought I'd take a second before I even film, edit, and post that one to go over the books that I've already read that I love within the sci-fi horror genre. This video is going to... What am I doing with my hand? Again. Why? Always with the hand. Ah! So this video is going to include 6 books that I love that I qualify as sci-fi horror. And I want to be really clear when I start this and say that by sci-fi horror, I don't only mean space horror. A lot of these books do not take place in space. Some of them do, but some of them don't. And so I don't want people coming at me and in the comments just complaining about the fact that these are not sci-fi horror, because sci-fi does not just mean in space. Sci-fi is short for science fiction. So anything that qualifies as science fiction counts. Every time I look up sci-fi horror recs, I find nothing but space books, and it's sometimes a little bit frustrating because that's not all there is. I am often in the mood for something spooky in space, but that doesn't mean that that's all there is or all I'm interested in and want to read. So I thought that if I put this list together, it could be a couple of different kinds of sci-fi, and it could maybe open the door for people who don't have a lot of experience with sci-fi fiction, or this can give a couple of options to people who do read it and are just looking for something new to read. Again though, not all of these are in space, so nobody get mad at me. Don't come into this list expecting everything to be in space. Don't comment and say, hey, why was this one in the ocean? This isn't space. It's sci-fi, okay? It is. Thank you. So let's get going with my sci-fi video. Yes. Basically all of my books are in boxes right now, except for the ones that I have as a backdrop in these videos. So these will be getting packed up soon. You're gonna be seeing a lot of videos that are not as cute soon, but I'm doing my best. Because all of my books are packed up, I don't have any to show you right now. So all I'm gonna do is pop up cute little stuff right here. That's also why I'm standing all the way over here. I guess I didn't have to do that in the very beginning of the video, but it's already done. So let's get going. I just want you to know how serious I take this booktube thing. I'm using my phone to film because I don't have a normal camera. And so I printed out a list of the stuff to mention in the video and to talk about because I don't want to forget anything. So yeah, that's me, little note-taking person. Okay, so although the rest of these aren't going to be in any kind of order, I am going to start with my favorite. And this is actually 2 book recommendations in one, but I'm going to mostly just talk about the novella. So, Rolling in the Deep and Into the Drowning Deep. And both of these are by Mira Grant, who is the pen name for horror for Sean and Maguire. So if you're familiar with the Wayward Children series that I am always talking about and recommending and like bananas over, this is the same author, and they're basically my favorite author. I realized that recently because so many of the favorite books that I have, including the one I'm about to talk about, are by the same person. So I think that means that Sean and Maguire, aka Mira Grant, aka Deborah Baker, I believe, because for one of her books, she also wrote smaller books that are within those books, and I'm going off on a tangent. The point is, favorite author, and this is my favorite sci-fi horror book. So again, not space, and this is the ocean one I was talking about. My favorite ever novella, horror novella, sci-fi horror novella, is Rolling in the Deep. And I love it so much. I read it before I moved to California, so it's been about 6 or 7 years now. And I remember reading that and being like so creeped out and just so obsessed with it. And then it got turned into like a full book. Like, the novella came out and it did pretty well, and then the author wrote like an entire thick book. So that was very exciting. I will say that I liked the book a little bit less than the novella, but still, I would highly recommend these. And these are both about a team going out to investigate some reports of mermaids. And actually, they're like a documentary crew in the big book, and they're going out there to kind of film mermaids. They know that they aren't really going to have mermaids out there, so they have these girls come out who are trained to swim as mermaids and wear like tails and everything, and they're planning on filming them while doing the documentary. And they find some shit out there that they were not expecting. And so the novella is very similar, except it doesn't deal with the documentary crew. They're just scientists that are going out there. But some of the characters from the novella have like siblings or know people that are in the other book, and that book references the novella a lot. So it's pretty important, although I will say you can go into the big book without even reading the little one. I love how I'm just referring to this as now the big book, but I just mean because it's thick and fat. So yeah. I love these books because they're very gory. They also have a lot of science in them. The thick one specifically has an autistic character, so there's autistic rep, which I love. And actually, Shauna McGuire has commented to me on Twitter because I asked if there was a sequel coming out. And if I can find that response, I will try to pop it up here. But I was very, very excited. And I'm super excited if the big book gets a sequel. I just want more of these killer mermaids, more in this world. I want to know what they are, like where they came from, what's going on with that. I just want more. As a person, I am terrified of underwater stuff, like dark water or creepy things underwater, specifically too if there are man-made objects underwater like doors or chairs. Anything like that freaks me out so bad. I don't know why. I just get like my heart starts beating fast and I get so scared. In video games where there are underwater levels, even simple like fun games like Mario, I get scared. I get really nervous. When I was younger, I would have to have my little brothers beat the levels for me that were underwater because I could not handle it. Like my anxiety just goes too wild. I know it's weird and it's so silly, but I can't control it. That said, I love horror that takes place underwater so much. Like, I love shark movies. I love movies about like ancient civilizations and creepy things that people find underwater. I love books about it. I love ocean monsters. It's so scary to me, and there's so much down there that's not discovered and that we don't know, and that makes it so horrifying and so terrifying. So yeah, that's a fun thing about me. I just really, really, really like underwater aquatic horror, and when you involve science and creatures, it's gonna be a win for me. It's really, really going to be a win for me. And this always will be. This is my favorite novella. Highly recommend. I'm starting this off with like a very big recommendation that if you haven't read this, please read it. I love it. It's so good. Okay, so I lied. I have one shelf over there of books that I haven't packed yet because they're my like special edition books or books that I really like or have like alternate covers for that I really wanted. Even if they're like not really worth anything, they're worth something to me, so I want to keep them all together. So I'm packing those last when I pack all the stuff behind me right now, and this was actually with those because again, this is my favorite novella. This was limited to I think 1,000 copies, so I think you might have a little bit of a difficult time finding a physical copy of it, but I believe it's available as an audiobook, and I know it's definitely available in digital format, so that's how I actually originally read it, because when I read it for the very first time, I only had it on Kindle, and then a friend gifted me this book, which I am so grateful for because this is one of my favorite books and prized possessions. Like I love having this so much. Yeah, so killer mermaids, creepy, creepy, creepy stuff involving underwater ocean places. So I definitely recommend this. Yes. Okay, and then moving on to the second book, we have The Murders of Molly Southbourne. And this is actually a trilogy, I believe. I don't think there are 4 books, but there might be. I wasn't expecting it to go past the first book, and then a sequel got released, and then a third book got released. So I was honestly surprised every time new ones kept coming out, and I've read all of the ones that are out. I think there are only 3, but I could be wrong. Who knows? That's irrelevant right now. What's relevant is this book. Again, this one is not in space. This one is also not underwater. This one involves clones. I feel like we can all agree that clones are pretty solidly sci-fi, just historically, like since forever. So I included this one. This is about a girl who, when she bleeds, no matter why she's bleeding or where from, her blood turns into a clone. And there is like a hole that opens up in the ground wherever the blood falls. And a new her grows, and her name is Molly, so they call these clones Mollies. And the girl is raised with her mother and father, who basically teach her how to fight. They teach her that she's not supposed to bleed, but if she does, she needs to immediately disinfect and burn the area and every part of her blood so that another clone won't sprout. And this just follows her growing up, and as she's kind of dealing with this really weird affliction and the impact that it has on her, not just her, but her family as well. I will say that again, because I've read all of the books in the series so far, I'm not entirely sure which bits happen in which book because I kind of binge read them all at once. I don't want to say something that might have not been revealed until like book 2 or 3, thinking that it was part of book 1 and something that was there all along. So I'm not going to say too much about this, but I told you the basics. It's very good. There's a lot of blood and gore and like fighting. Like this would make such a fun short film or even just like TV show if they embellished a bit. I don't know if anybody else watched Orphan Black, but I loved that show. And this kind of has like a similar vibe, and not just because there are clones, but like for other reasons as well. I just think this would be really cool to see on screen. And then, because I couldn't not mention this, obviously again, I am a Christopher Pike fangirl, you can see from the shelf. Oh, actually, I think I have the book. Yes, okay, we have another one. Season of Passage, haven't packed it yet. You can see that I like tend to not pack my favorite things until the very end. Yeah, this is one of Christopher Pike's adult novels, so I do want to specify that. I mostly talk about his like teen, like YA thrillers and horror because they're just so fun and campy, but this is very solidly adult. This one does take place in space. This is one of my favorite horror sci-fi books, especially my favorite ones that take place in space. It is so good. It's so creepy. There are scenes in this one that have stuck with me since I was like 16 years old when I read this for the first time, like eyeballs in space and just like all kinds of gory weird shit. This is also very leaning toward if you like vampires. I know space vampires sounds absolutely bananas, and space reptiles, and just I don't know how to say what this is about in like a small way because there's so much to it. Much like all of Christopher Pike's books, there are all of these random things. It's kind of like a big tangled web of plot. Sometimes it makes sense at the end and sometimes it doesn't. It's so fun. It's so gory. It's very dark, and it has a lot to say about humanity and how we as people deal with things, the choices we make when we're put in tough situations. Just so many things. This book has so many things. I love it. It's a little bit of like a thick boy, and the writing, the font is tiny. So don't take this like mass market paper book size and be misled. It's a long book and it's like a chunky, thick book. But if you can get through it, it's so good. And honestly, I think it's worth like investing your time just getting completely absorbed into Pike's writing and into this story. The main character's name is Lauren Wagner, and she's like one of the most memorable characters for me from Pike books. I love this one so much. If you've never read a Pike book before, I don't know if this would be the best one to start with to give you like the vibe of his writing in general. But if you like this one, I would highly recommend reading other stuff by him. Just knowing that, again, his teen stuff is a lot campier and a lot of it's very fun. So if you've ever been interested in reading a Pike book, go for it. Start with this one, or Monster, or Road to Nowhere. I'm actually going to be doing a video soon where I recommend Pike books based on favorite subgenres in horror or tropes. So yeah, that'll be coming soon. But for now, I love this book so much. It's so good. And then the next 3 books I do not have physical copies of, but that's not because I don't love them. It's because I packed them all together in a special little My Favorite Horror Books box. And yeah, that's already out in the living room packed. But so we're gonna do the little pop-up thing, and we're gonna start with Dead Silence. And this is actually a more recent release. I think it actually came out either in 2021 or 2022. I believe I read it last year. So yeah, and this is about a team that goes to investigate a ship that had disappeared a few years ago and now has mysteriously reappeared. And this ship is really cool because it's kind of like an ocean cruise liner, you know, like the Titanic, but in space. Like it's a very big luxury spaceship, but it's built to look like a luxury like ocean liner. Like it literally looks like Titanic in space, which is such a cool and creepy and weird concept to me, and I love it. I love anything that has to do with the Titanic. That's probably weird to say because a lot of people died and it was a tragedy, but I have this weird interest in Titanic, and I have since I was a little kid. Like when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I was up past when I should have gone to bed, and in the living room they were watching this like old documentary about the Titanic, and I don't know why, but I like got up and I walked out and I like crawled on my hands and knees past where they were so they wouldn't see me, and then I hid behind a chair because I was like stealth mode Cassie, and I was like, I have to watch this movie, like I have to see this. And I don't know what like I didn't know anything about it, but I sat there behind the chair and I watched it, and something weird came over me. I got so upset. Like I started having trouble breathing, but I was crying, and so I was like hyperventilating, and my mom and like grandma turned around and were like, what the hell is going on? Because they thought I was asleep in bed, and they just hear me like whimpering and like heavy breathing from behind a chair. They're like, what the fuck? And so yeah, I don't know why, but I've always been very, very impacted by the Titanic or anything that has to do with it. It's just a big topic of interest for me. I also just like ocean mysteries in general, like the Mary Celeste and just like other different ships that have disappeared and either reappeared or been found or never been found. Like, I think that's all wild and like really cool and really creepy and really sad. And I've already said this many times in the past, but I love stuff that makes me sad. So yeah, it's just a weird specific thing to me. And that specific thing about me made me so interested when I heard about this book and what it was going to be about. I was just like, sign me up. Yes, Titanic type of ship in space. Absolutely, give it to me. And then it's a ghost ship, which I'm not even gonna go on a side rant about Ghost Ship, the movie, but if you haven't seen that, it's got like the best opening intro to a movie almost of all time, probably of all time. I mean, I'm even gonna say it, Watchmen does have a really good opening intro too, so, but Ghost Ship, totally different vibe than Watchmen, but also very, very, very good. I love it, so good. Yeah, so they get aboard this ship that has been missing, and they don't know what happened or where the people went or anything like that. There were like celebrities, famous people. Imagine if like a bunch of famous celebrities and like rich people now went into space, which, didn't they do that? Didn't somebody do that? I feel like somebody did that. But in a luxury space liner where they've got like all these amazing amenities and like room service. How fantastic, room service in the stars, like. Anyways, as great as that sounds, this turns horrifying. Like they find some wild shit on there. I really loved this book. I will say there's a romantic subplot, so if you don't like romance and horror, you maybe want to skip this one because it's a pretty big subplot. Like it's a pretty big part of the book. I didn't mind it. I was fine with it, but I did see a lot of other people complain in the reviews about it, which I think sucks because the book itself was so much fun and it was so good, but to each their own, and if your own does not involve horror romance, don't go for it. Just to be clear too, like it's not like a horror romance, like it's not like aliens doing it, you know? Like, but there is a romantic subplot, so yeah. Heading away from space a little bit in this next one. So we have The Luminous Dead, and this is a really, really good book. It is very solidly sci-fi, but I've seen a mixture of reviews who don't seem to understand where it takes place. So I just wanted to start this by saying it takes place, and it is very spacey, but it takes place in caves, and the caves are on a different planet because our main character goes to another planet to explore their caves. So it's not like, I don't think they're like Earth caves. They're like another world's caves. I've said caves so many times now that I don't even know if that's a word. It has no meaning. It just sounds like a sound, and a pretty repulsive one at that. Like cave, 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 cave. Ugh, I hate that. I'm sorry. Whew, okay. So this one has a bit of like, this is very horror-y and creepy. It's very claustrophobic. Our main character is like going to explore this cave system, and they're being paid by like this mysterious benefactor who they can communicate with in their suit. And the spacesuit thing that they're wearing, or cave suit, I guess, is very cool in this. It's very unique. It's tied to their like body, like not tied, but like it's built into their body. So it helps them breathe. It gives them like nutrients and stuff like that. It's like a part of them. So, and in this cave system, there are like underwater bits, and there is something like, you'll start to figure out that there's something down there with the main character. And when I say this is claustrophobic, I am not exaggerating. Like this is so claustrophobic. You are in like really small spaces with the character alone for a majority of the book, which I thought was very creepy and like vibey and atmospheric. But some people did mention that they wish there were other characters. I don't know. But if you kind of like something that's like very introspective where you spend a lot of time alone, I think this would be your jam. And For this one as well, there's a little bit of like a romantic subplot, like very small. But yeah, there is that I do want to mention. And there's also like this kind of like mystery behind the whole story where the main characters kind of searching for their own answers in addition to answers for the mysterious benefactor that's like paying for everything. So there's like a little bit of mystery, a little bit of horrific stuff that's happening like in the cave system, and a lot of claustrophobia. And then the last book I have on this list is Your Mind is a Terrible Thing. This is another novella on the list, and so if depending on whether you like long books, whether you have short books, I have like a little bit of everything here, I guess. I read this one last year. This is like my 4th or 5th book by Haley Piper. I'm not sure. I've lost count. I love them all. They're all so good. This one I really, really loved because this was like an episode of Space? An episode of Space? What does that even mean? This is like an episode of Star Trek, but like a lot grosser and more gory, with giant killer brains floating around trying to kill people. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a theme here because I do want to mention that this one also has like a little bit of like a romance thing going on, but it's not like a main part of it. And it's a little bit different than the other books that I've mentioned that have had romance plots as well. So yeah. And with this one, our main character wakes up alone on the ship and they don't know where the other people have gone, and they're like, what the fuck? And they go out into the hallway and then there's like a giant brain, and it's fucking weird. It is so weird. It's so gross. I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. One of my favorite parts of this was like this little like side character robot creature thing. And they were just so much fun. They like said the wildest thing. Like, I think they were kind of in the book for like a little bit of like comedic relief, but also as just like a secondary character, or otherwise the main character is alone for the whole thing. And as like a secondary character, like comedic relief or whatever, it was just so good. It was so much fun. There was like enough levity that it kept the brutal, gross stuff happening from being like a little bit too extreme, from things being a little too dark. But it wasn't so light that I would call this like a horror comedy at all. It was just like the timing and stuff was just fun, and it was just unique. An extra little thing that I had in the book that I liked. I also read this one in like one sitting because it is so fast paced. And then at the end, it has a little bit of like, there's some stuff about like mental health, how our brains can sometimes work against us. And I really like that. I like when there's like a little bit of subtext to my horror. Even if it's not something the author intended, it's just something I picked up on that I made up in my head. I don't care. I love it. It's great. So this is really fun and highly recommend it. All right, so end of the list. That's 6 books in the sci-fi horror genre that I really love. I tried to include a mixture of longer and shorter books, so if you're like in the mood for something very quick, you can have that, or if you're in the mood to invest a little bit more time, you can do that. I gave all of these books 5 stars. I love them all. I mean, I think I've read almost all of them more than once, so I can definitely say they're like very solidly my favorites. I'm hoping that I can add more books to this list of favorite sci-fi recommendations as I go and as I like explore more and read more. We'll see how the reading vlog I'm doing right now goes, and we'll see if I have any more recommendations from that. But yeah, if you have any recommendations for me and you want to tell me about your favorite sci-fi horror books, I would love them. I'm always looking for recommendations, so leave a comment, tell me about them, what it's called, I don't know, whatever you want, and I will go check it out. And then as always, thank you so much for hanging out with me for another list of books. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you go, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!